Hi there, and welcome to The Daily Gardener, a podcast about gardening, botanical history, and literature. I'm your host, Jennifer Ebling, and today is May 25th, and there are just 26 days until the first day of summer. Today we celebrate a man who changed his personal beliefs and life philosophy after studying nature. We'll also learn about a woman who writes about her lifelong relationship with the garden. We'll hear an excerpt about the spring garden with a bit of empathy for what it's like to be a weed. And we grow that garden library today with a fabulous reference for plant identification. And then we'll wrap things up with the son of a gardener who grew to love plants and nature and became one of America's best-loved poets. But first, here's today's curated news. Today's curated news comes to us from my friend Kathy Jentz over at the Washington Gardener. This is a post that she shared on May Day of this year, and it was called DIY Strawberry Rocks. Kathy writes, "These little strawberry rocks are meant to fool creatures that attack your berries just as they start to ripen. The theory being that birds and squirrels try to bite the ripe strawberry and find it rock hard and then move on." Kathy wrote, "I didn't want to net my strawberry bed for fear of a bird or other creature getting caught in the netting and dying. So when I heard of this option, I thought it was worth a try. Whether they work or not, we shall see. If nothing else, they are cute and add to the garden decor." Well, Kathy is right, and all you need to do to make your own little rock strawberries is to get some acrylic paint, craft brushes, a marker, and a sealer. And so really quickly, here are the instructions. You're going to grab some small stones that are about strawberry size and strawberry shaped, and then clean them and dry them. Put on a base coat of red paint, let that dry. You can then apply another coat and potentially more coats if need be. Then you're going to add the stem. This does not take much in terms of art. Anybody can do this. And then you just take a little black marker and you put on the little black dots to represent the seeds of the strawberry. And then after that, you apply a sealant. Now, in this case, what Kathy did is she just used clear nail polish. That's fantastic. My daughter's got loads of that laying around. And then when they're dry, you just place the rocks in and among your strawberry plants. But I think Kathy's right. These little rock strawberries are so adorable. They're so cute. And your kids will love to make these. Whether or not they actually keep the birds or the critters away from your berries, that remains to be seen. But I'm telling you, these little strawberries are still worth the effort. Plus, you can leave them out year-round or put them in a little bowl. I think they would be absolutely too sweet. You could use them as a table decoration. You could use them to fill up a pin holder. The options are endless. All right, now if you would like to check out this post by Kathy called DIY Strawberry Rocks, all you need to do is head on over to the Facebook group for the show, the Daily Gardener Community, and right there at the top is a little magnifying glass. You can type in the word strawberry, and Kathy's post will pop right up, and you'll see these cute little strawberry rocks. They're irresistible. And if you're not in the group, you can easily join by simply heading on up to the search bar in Facebook and typing in the words Daily Gardener Community, where you'd search for a friend and then request to join. And then all you have to do is quickly answer a handful of questions and I will admit you into the group. Now, with that said, I want to make sure that I welcome some of our new members from the past 2 weeks: Lisa Bennett, Katya Chemakova, Nancy Sharp, Rhonda K. Lyons, Judy Ford, Liberty Cole, Amy BC, Julius Cornides, Theophilus Osmundiame, Kelly Bedenbaugh Smith, and Nancy Schweibold. Welcome to all of you. And let me just say that I sincerely hope that I did not mispronounce your names too badly. In any case, I look forward to meeting you in the group and hearing all about you and your gardens. It's time for today's botanical history. Here's botanical history for today, May 25th. Today is the birthday of the American transcendentalist, essayist, philosopher, and poet Ralph Waldo Emerson, who was born on this day, May 25th, in 1803. Ralph Waldo Emerson was a son of Boston, and by the time he finished his schooling at Harvard, he decided to go by his middle name, Waldo. He was his class poet, and he wrote an original poem for his graduation. 6 years later, on Christmas Day, he would meet his first wife, Ellen. 2 years after that, he lost her to tuberculosis. Her death eventually made him a wealthy man, although he had to sue his in-laws to acquire his inheritance. Deeply grieved after losing Ellen, Waldo eventually traveled to Europe, where he visited the Royal Botanical Garden in Paris. The experience was a revelation to him. At the Paris Garden, Waldo saw plants organized according to Jussieu's system of classification. Suddenly, Waldo was able to see connections between different species. The American historian and biographer Robert D. Richardson wrote, Emerson's moment of insight into the interconnectedness of things in the Jardin des Plantes was a moment of almost visionary intensity that pointed him away from theology and toward science. Upon his return to the States, Waldo befriended other forward thinkers and writers of his time, like William Wordsworth, Samuel Taylor Coleridge, and Thomas Carlyle. In 1835, Waldo married his second wife, Lydia Jackson. Waldo changed her name from Lydia to Lydian, and he called her by other names like Queenie and Asia, but she always called him Mr. Emerson. And it's around this time that Waldo began to think differently about the world and his perspective on life. Waldo was also the son of a minister, which makes his move away from religion and societal beliefs all the more impressive. By 1836, Waldo published his philosophy of transcendentalism in an essay that he titled Nature. He wrote, "Nature is a language, and every new fact one learns is a new word. But it is not a language taken to pieces and dead in the dictionary, but the language put together in a most significant and universal sense. I wish to learn this language, not that I may know a new grammar, but that I may read the great book that is written in that tongue." The next year, Waldo gave a speech called The American Scholar, and it so moved Oliver Wendell Holmes Sr. that he called Waldo's oration text America's Intellectual Declaration of Independence. Well, after his Nature essay, Waldo befriended Henry David Thoreau. And in late September of 1838, he also spent time with their mutual friend, the Salem, Massachusetts Unitarian minister and American botanist John Lewis Russell. During his visit, John and Waldo spent time together botanizing, and Waldo wrote about the visit in his journal. He reflected, a good woodland day or two with John Lewis Russell, who came here and showed me mushrooms, lichens, and mosses. A man in whose mind things stand in the order of cause and effect and not in the order of a shop or even of a cabinet. In 1855, when Walt Whitman published his Leaves of Grass, he sent a copy to Emerson. In return, Waldo sent Whitman a 5-page letter of praise. With Emerson's support, Whitman issued a second edition that, unbeknownst to Waldo, quoted a passage from his letter that was printed in gold leaf on the cover, and it said, "I greet you at the beginning of a great career." Well, Waldo was not pleased by this. He had wanted the letter to remain private. In the twilight of his life, Ralph Waldo Emerson was invited to join a group of 9 intellectuals on a camping trip in the Adirondacks. The goal was simple: to connect with nature. It was, after all, Ralph Waldo Emerson who had written, "Adopt the pace of nature. Her secret is in patience." Along for the experience in the Adirondacks was Harvard's naturalist Louis Agassiz, the great botanist that had visited Emerson, James Russell Lowell, and the American naturalist Jeffries Wyman. It was an incredible trip. It was Ralph Waldo Emerson who wrote, "The landscape belongs to the person who looks at it." And he wrote, "Write it on your heart that every day is the best day in the year." And he also wrote this popular garden verse, "The earth laughs in flowers." Finally, here's a little prayer that Waldo wrote, giving thanks for the gifts of nature. For flowers that bloom about our feet, for tender grass so fresh, so sweet, for song of bird and hum of bee, for all things fair we hear or see. Father in heaven, we thank thee. And today is the birthday of the Antiguan American novelist, essayist, and short story writer Jamaica Kincaid, who was born Elaine Potter Richardson on this day, May 25th, in 1949. Jamaica Kincaid is a gardener and a popular garden writer. Her book, Among Flowers, A Walk in the Himalaya, offers many wonderful excerpts. Here she discusses the dreams of gardeners and how they form our desire and curiosity. She writes, "Something that never escapes me as I putter about the garden, physically and mentally. Desire and curiosity inform the inevitable boundaries of the garden. And boundaries, especially when they are an outgrowth of something as profound as the garden, with all its holy restrictions and admonitions, must be violated." Jamaica's book, My Garden, offers an intimate examination of her relationship with her garden. She writes, "I shall never have the garden I have in my mind. But that for me is the joy of it. Certain things can never be realized, and so all the more reason to attempt them." And here she talks about time and the destruction of a garden. In a way, a garden is the most useless of creations, the most slippery of creations. It is not like a painting or a piece of sculpture. It won't accrue value as time goes on. Time is its enemy. Time passing is merely the countdown for the parting between garden and gardener. And the garden has taught me to live, to appreciate the times when things are fallow, and when they're not. Jamaica also wrote, I love planting. I love digging holes, putting plants in, tapping them in, and I love weeding. But I don't like tidying up the garden afterwards. Now, during the pandemic in August of 2020, Jamaica wrote an essay for The New Yorker called The Disturbances of the Garden. She wrote about learning to garden from her mother. My mother was a gardener, and in her garden, it was as if Vertumnus and Pomona had become one. She would find something growing in the wilds of her native island, Dominica, or the island on which she lived and gave birth to me, Antigua. And if it pleased her, or if it was in fruit, and the taste of the fruit delighted her, she took a cutting of it. Really, she just broke off a shoot with her bare hands. Or the seed, separating it from its pulpy substance and collecting it in her beautiful pink mouth, and brought it into her own garden and tended to it in a careless, everyday way, as if it were in the wild forest or in the garden of a regal palace. The woods, the garden. For her, the wild and the cultivated were equal and yet separate, together and apart. Later, Jamaica writes about her own relationship with the garden. She says, "But where is the garden, and where am I in it?" This memory of growing things, anything, outside, not inside, remained in my memory. In New York City in particular, I planted marigolds, portulaca, herbs for cooking, petunias, and other things that were familiar to me, all reminding me of my mother, the place I came from. Those first plants were in pots and lived on the roof of a diner in a dilapidated building whose ownership was uncertain, which is the fate of us all. Ownership of ourselves and of the ground on which we walk, and ownership of the vegetable kingdom are all uncertain too. Nevertheless, in the garden, we perform the act of possessing. To name is to possess. I began to refer to plants by their Latin names, and this so irritated my editor at this magazine that she made me promise that I would never learn the Latin name of another plant. I loved her very much, and so I promised that I would never do such a thing. But I did continue to learn the Latin names of plants and never told her. Betrayal. Another feature of any garden. It's time for today's Unearthed Words. Today's Unearthed Words come to us from the Australian screenwriter, producer, and novelist, Stephen M. Irwin. This is an excerpt from his book, The Dead Path. After Nicholas hung up the phone, he watched his mother carry buckets and garden tools across the couch grass toward a bed that would, come spring, be brightly ablaze as tropical coral with colorful arctosis, impatiens, and petunias. Catherine dug with hard, chopping strokes, pulling out wandering Jew and oxalis, tossing the uprooted weeds into a black pot beside her. The garden will be beautiful, he thought. But how do the weeds feel about it? Sacrifices must be made. It's time to grow that garden library with today's book, Plant Identification Terminology by James G. Harris and Melinda Wolfe Harris. This book came out in 2001, and the subtitle is An Illustrated Glossary. Well, to me, this book is an oldie but goodie. I first bought my copy of this book back in 2013. And the purpose of this book is to help you understand the terms that are used in plant identification keys and descriptions. And it also provides definitions for almost 3,000 words. Now, if you're looking to improve your grasp of plant identification terminology, this book will be an invaluable reference. And just as a heads up, there are around 30 used copies that are reasonably priced on Amazon. But of course, they're not going to last forever. So if you're interested in this book, don't wait, don't sit on it. Make sure you act and get your copy, because after those used copies are gone, then the next lowest price is around $200. Now, this book is 216 pages of exactly what it says it is: plant identification terminology. And I should mention that there are also illustrations. You can get a copy of Plant Identification Terminology by James G. Harris and Melinda Wolfe Harris and support the show using the Amazon link in today's show notes for around $12. Finally, here's something sweet to revive the little botanic spark in your heart. Today is the birthday of the Michigan-born poet, gardener, and the 1954 Pulitzer Prize winner for poetry, Theodore Roethke, who was born on this day, May 25th in 1908. Ted wrote about nature and the American Northwest. He enjoyed focusing on the little things in life. His father was a gardener, a greenhouse grower, a rose lover, and a drinker. As a result, many of Ted's pieces are about new life springing from rot and decay. His best poem is often considered to be The Rose. The poem reminded him of his father so much that he could barely speak about the poem without crying. Today, garden signs and social media posts quote Ted's verse, "Deep in their roots, all flowers keep the light." Ted battled bipolar depression most of his life, and his darkness can be seen in his poem called The Geranium. It goes like this. When I put her out once by the garbage pail, she looked so limp and bedraggled, so foolish and trusting, like a sick poodle or a wizened aster in late September. I brought her back in again for a new routine: vitamins, water, and whatever sustenance seemed sensible at the time. She'd lived so long on gin, bobby pins, half-smoked cigars, dead beer, her shriveled petals falling on the faded carpet, the stale steak grease stuck to her fuzzy leaves. Dried out, she creaked like a tulip. The things she endured, the dumb dames shrieking half the night, or the two of us alone, both seedy, me breathing booze at her, she leaning out of her pot toward the window. Near the end, she seemed almost to hear me. That was scary. So when that snuffling cretin of a maid threw her, pot and all, into the trash can, I said nothing. But I sacked the presumptuous hag the next week. I was that lonely. Well, a sunnier and more tender poem written by Theodore Roethke was called Transplanting. Ted wrote the poem from the perspective of, quote, A very small child, all interior drama, no comment, no interpretation. Here's Transplanting by Theodore Roethke. Watching hands transplanting, turning and tamping, lifting the young plants with 2 fingers, sifting in a palmful of fresh loam, one swift movement, then plumping in the bunched roots, a single twist of the thumbs, a tamping and turning, all in one, quick on the wooden bench, a shaking down while the stem stays straight, once, twice, a faint third thump. Into the flat box it goes, ready for the long days under the sloped glass, the sun warming the fine loam, the young horns winding and unwinding, creaking their thin spines, the underleaves, the smallest buds breaking into nakedness, the blossoms extending out into the sweet air, the whole flower extending outward, stretching and reaching. Theodore Roethke died in 1963. He was visiting friends on Bainbridge Island, and one afternoon he was fixing mint juleps by the pool. His friends went into the main house to get something, and when they returned, 3 perfect mint juleps sat on a table by the edge of the pool, and Ted was floating face down in the water. He'd suffered a brain aneurysm. After his death, the family honored their friend, the poet Theodore Roethke, by filling in the pool. They installed a beautiful Zen garden in the footprint of the pool. It's framed by conifers and features raked sand and a handful of moss-covered stones. There is no plaque. Today we'll end the podcast with Theodore's Ode to Spring, called Vernal Sentiment. When the crocuses poke up their heads in the usual places, the frog scum appear on the pond with the same froth of green, and boys moon at girls with last year's fatuous faces. I never am bored, however familiar the scene. When from under the barn the cat brings a small litter, 2 yellow and black, and one that looks in between, though it all happened before, I cannot grow bitter. I rejoice in the spring, as though no spring ever had been. Thanks for listening to The Daily Gardener, and remember, for a happy, healthy life, garden every day. The Daily Gardener is produced in lovely Maple Grove and Wyoming, Minnesota. If you want to read today's show notes, just head on over to thedailygardener.org. And while you're there, be sure to sign up for my free Friday newsletter. And don't forget that you have a standing invitation to join the free Facebook group for listeners of the show. Just search for Daily Gardener Community the next time you're on Facebook and request to join. Last but not least, you can always get in touch by emailing me at jennifer@thedailygardener.org. I'm your host, Jennifer Ebling, and as always, have a great day in the garden, and we'll see you tomorrow.